Hey, welcome. This is Lee Waller, and I am working in Unreal Engine 5.5's motion design tools. Now, I will say that these tools are still considered experimental. So when you want to work with these tools, you're going to need to initialize the plugin in Unreal Engine. I have a tutorial on that you can take a look at. Also, with these tools being experimental, I've noticed over the time that I've been working with them, they do change. So it seems like that they're still very much in development. With that said, in this tutorial and in another tutorial, I'm going to take a look at creating complex shapes in Unreal Engine. Down in the description of this tutorial, you'll find this link right here to this Gumroad page where you can download a version of that the Drop SVG, and then also some of the materials that I'm using in this tutorial. Once you've downloaded the materials and you want to add them to the project, you'll need to go into the project itself and create a folder. I'm here in Windows Explorer, and this is the location of the project on my hard drive. I'm going to double click on that and open that up, and you'll see this is how Unreal Engine stores a project. That's the actual file that will open up the project, but the other folders here make up the project. We want to go into this content folder right here. I'm going to double click on it. I already have a materials folder from where I was working on this earlier, so I'm going to add in a second one. I'm just going to right click, go to new, and do folder, and I'll label this materials 2. And as soon as I hit enter on that, you'll see right here in my project that materials 2 folder showed up. So I'm going to go into the project there, and now I'm going to need the materials that I downloaded. Here's the materials that I downloaded, and I unzipped them from the zip file. I'm actually going to need to move these materials twice. First, from the downloads file, I'm just going to copy them, Control C right there. Then I'm going to go back into that new materials 2 folder that I created in Windows Explorer, open it up and paste them in. And then from that point, I'm going to just select all of them and then drag them into the Unreal Materials 2 folder right there. You'll get all of these errors over here, but that actually populates them in this Materials 2 folder. Now you'll have access to them in Unreal Engine. The first part, I'm going to take a look at importing SVGs. If you're not familiar, an SVG is a graphic design file format. Most of the time I work with it in Adobe Illustrator. There are other ways that you can create them. You can also download them online, and you can convert other vector-based images to SVGs. So with any type of content like this, the first thing we're going to need to do is import some content. For the first SVG that I want to import, I did a search for SVG logos, and I came across this reshot.com. From there, I downloaded this Android logo. To import that, I'm going to go to the content drawer, and I'm going to right there make sure content is selected, and I'm going to add a new folder. And I'm going to label that SVG, and I'll know where my SVGs are, open that up, and I'm going to import that first SVG. There's the first one that I want to import, so I'm going to open that up and select that and save it. There's 2 ways to add the SVG into the viewer. The first one I'm going to go over just so you know it. Right here under Actors, you can select and drag in the SVG or double click, and it will add the SVG Actor in there. Right now that has nothing loaded in it. We can take a look at that. Here in the Motion Design Outliner, I'll open that up, and there's the SVG Actor. And right here on SVG Data, this is where you can load the SVG you want to use. It's only looking for SVGs, so you can click on the drop-down menu, and any of the SVGs you have imported into Unreal will show up. So of course, there's the Android logo. I can click on it, and you'll see that it's loaded it in. I'm going to delete that real quick just to show you the easiest way. After you import, all you need to do is just grab that SVG, drag it in, and drop it. I'm going to open up my window here just a little bit so that we can see this a little bit better. And we'll start taking a look at our options. The first thing I'm going to do is just reset my location. And there's 2 ways to increase the size of this image. Right now, I've not seen a difference in either way. You have scale here, and then you also have scale right here. I'm going to scale this up to 7 for right now to start exploring the properties of this SVG Actor. You'll see here first that we have render mode. There's two options there. One, it defaults to 3D, which is probably the one that you're going to want to use the most. And the other option is 2D. I'll select it. You'll see that it changes the size of it, resets it. There's not a lot that you can do with this right now. That's why I mentioned this is still experimental. You can see that my scale right here doesn't have much effect on it. So I'm going to go up here and scale. Let me reset that and lock that right there and then scale this up. I'll go ahead and set that to 3.5. So a few options that you have on 2D mode is you can deselect the SVG eyes unit right here. I'll deselect that. And now the material that has been imported with it will respond to the lighting in the scene. I am going to go ahead and rotate this because I want to show you on the back side of this, this is not a two-sided material. So if you go to the opposite side of this, the back side of it, you'll see that this is no longer showing up. That is an issue, especially if you're working with 2D and 3D space. There's really not an option to change the material or the color of this object in 2D mode. So at this point, if you are looking at using SVGs as flat 2D objects, it's still probably going to be best that you use that in 3D mode. So I'm going to go back to 3D mode. I'm going to reset this scale here and then bring this back up to 7. I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the 2D shapes about the SVG eyes unit here. This has to do with the lighting, and let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. I'm going to go ahead and extrude this, and I'll come back to this in just a moment, but I'm going to set that extrusion to 5. You see that even though we've extruded it, it looks like there's no depth to it. That has to do with the material of this object responding to the lights in the scene. Right now, the material is not responding to the lights in the scene. So if we deselect that, you see immediately the change. The material is now responding to the lights in the scene. Now to the extrude type and the fills extrude. I'm going to rotate this so we can see it a little bit better. Right now, the pivot point is on the front face of this, and it is extruding from the front face forward. So we can change that and go to the extrude type and select front, back, and mirrored. And what it does is it puts the pivot point in the center and extrudes from both directions. Right now, it seems like it causes a little bit of a glitch. So if I bring that back around to 0, let me reset that. You'll see that the pivot point has been offset to the left here. You can correct that simply by going to scale, just scaling that real quick and then setting your scale back to where you had it. A little bit later, I'm going to bring in another SVG and I'll take a look at the shape's offset. The next property is the bevel distance. I'm going to jump out of the camera and move in closer to the object a little bit. This is going to allow us to bevel these edges here. So if we're not wanting these sharp edges, we have this option. So I'll increase the bevel distance, and you're going to need to move that, adjust that, and then let go of it to actually see it render. But you'll see now that we have this 45-degree angle between these two sides. You can continue to increase that up to 0.5 right there. You'll see that we get this displacement, this tearing in the object. They give you the option here under smooth fill shapes to select that, and it helps clean that up. So you can adjust that. I'm going to set that back down to 0.2. And you have the smoothing offset here. I'm going to set that to 0.3 to bring that up just a little bit. I'm going to go back into my camera here. With the SVG selected there, there's no material options appearing in the details right here. However, right up here at the top of the details panel, you'll notice these different components we have. And right there, every SVG that comes in will have at least one of these fill components. It's possible that it'll have multiple. This SVG has come in as one complete fill component. I'm going to select it, and there we will find color options. You'll see here that we have under the SVG the color that it was imported with, and then we do have an option for materials. I'm going to take a look at this color option right here, click on it. First, I'm going to copy this color just for use a little bit later. I'm going to copy that right there. And then you'll see that I can change the color of that object, that SVG. I'll hit OK on that, but we can also create a material for it right here. So with Create with Material Designer, I'll click on that, and I'll go with PBR, hit Continue. And I want it to be that same color. So I'm going to go into the base color here, change this from texture to solid color, and then I will change that color right there. Paste that hexadecimal in and hit OK. I want to make this a little more metallic looking, so I'll make some changes to my roughness and to the metallic. I'm going to search for the white texture right there and apply that to both. And now I'll go into my channels options right there, and I'm going to bring that roughness down, say 0.1. And so we have this shiny metallic look. Let's make sure we save this material. It's very important that this material is saved. So I'm going to export Material Designer right there. I already have in my content folder there a folder that I added in earlier for materials. I'll go into there, and this is where I'm going to save this. Android green metal, and save that. And now we can close this out. I want to make sure that I've applied that particular material, because right now it's saying that it is the Material Designer material that we originally started with. So I need to apply that one we just saved. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to look for Android green metal right there and select it. Now I know that I've applied that material. To adjust that material, to adjust the color of it, to create a material for it, for any SVG, you'll need to go into the SVG, look for the fill component, click on it, and then you'll see the options to either change that color or to create a material for it. This is an image that I purchased online for another project, and the file format it was delivered in is an Adobe Illustrator file. It's simple enough to convert this to an SVG. All I need to do is save it as an SVG. So you'll see right there, it's an Adobe Illustrator file. I'm just going to go up to File, and I'm going to do Save a Copy. And right here, I'm going to change this from AI to SVG right there. And I'm going to save that on my desktop and hit Save. And just go with the default options right here, hit OK on that, and it's going to save that out. Now I have an SVG copy of this that I can import into Unreal Engine. Just to show you, this one will have a few more components to it. You'll see the eyes are separate, these ears up here are separate, and then the majority of it is the lion. I'll close this out and go back into Unreal Engine. I'm going to hide the Android for right now and go down here and import that in. There's the SVG that I just saved. I'll bring that in. Make sure that nothing is selected in the viewer, and I'm going to drag that in and drop it. And just like before, it creates that SVG for us. Give it just a moment to calculate everything, and there we have our details for it. With that in the viewer, I'm going to make a few adjustments. I'm going to reset the location, and then I'll scale that up. I'm going to deselect right there. You'll notice that we're not seeing anything. It is there. The issue is the material that has come in with it is black. So against the black background, we're not seeing it at all. So again, we have two ways we can work with this. Selecting the SVG, we'll take a look at the components right down here, and you'll see that this one has 5 fill components to it. Clicking on those, it will bring up the color and the material option for it. So we can add those materials in. You'll see as I select on them the different components that makes this up. We have the 2 ear pieces there, the main piece, and then the 2 eyes. I'm going to select the 2 eyes, and down here in materials, we'll click on this to open up both of those materials, and we can set that to the material that we want. I've already created materials for this, so I'm going to jump into those materials, and I'm going to use on the eyes right here this gold flat material that I created, and I'll go back in and apply that to those 2. And then for the rest of this, I'm going to apply another gold material to it. So I'll jump back into my content drawer right there to those materials, select that one, and click this button here that's going to apply that gold material, and let me drop down here to these 2 ear pieces and apply those. And so now I have 2 different materials on this SVG. I'll go back into the SVG and take a look now at the extrude and extrude this just a little bit more. I'm going to set that to 1. And on this one, I really don't want to create a bevel. And just to take a look at the other option of working with this, I will duplicate this real quick. I'm going to hide this top one real quick and select the second one, and I'm going to convert it. So with it selected right there, I'm still in modeling mode over here, transform, convert, and accept. And now it has broken out the 5 different pieces for this. So if we do want all of these together, there's a couple of options we have to group them together. In modeling mode, it gives us the option to merge all of these, and I'm actually going to come back and merge them in just a moment. And our other option is to wrap all of these up into a null object. Like I said, I'm going to merge all of them, so it's going to merge all of these into one static mesh. I'm going to click on merge, hit accept, and it has combined all of them together in this one mesh. So I'm going to click on it and type in lion. So those 5 components are now one static mesh. But one thing I want to bring your attention to, selecting that, we'll drop down here into the materials, and you'll see that we have those 2 separate materials. So we can still choose different materials for the eyes and for the rest of the object. To take this a little bit further, I'm going to add in one more SVG. So I'm going to hide the lion, go over to my content drawer and go back into my SVG folder and import one more. I'm going to bring in this logo right here. This is a logo that I created in Illustrator and saved it out as an SVG. Make sure that nothing's selected there, and then I'll bring that back in. Make sure that SVG is selected, and I'm going to scale this up right here, bring this up quite a bit. And this one has several fill components. I want to work with just one of these V's real quick, so I'm going to open this up. And I know it's the first fill component, so I'm going to select the rest of them and delete them. But again, just to see, you do have the ability to work with each component separately. So I'm going to select all of these and delete them. And so I have just this one V that I'm going to work with. I'll go back up and select the SVG so that we have the properties for it. The material on this is just black. So that's why we're only really seeing the outline of this. I can go down here and deselect our SVG eyes right there. And now it's responding to the lights in the scene. I'm going to reset its location, and then I'm going to extrude this just a little bit. I'll set that to 2. And the reason I'm looking at this one is I want to introduce another way of creating a bevel on this. And I'll apply a general material to this. With the fill component selected, I'm going to go in here and I have another material that I created earlier, silver. And there's that silver metal right there that I'm going to apply to the entire letter. I'm going to take a look at a different way of applying a bevel to these edges. This will mean going into modeling mode and doing a little bit of modeling, but I like the results of this better than the ones that we get from the SVG. And so to convert this, I'm going to make sure that the SVG is selected right there, that we're in our modeling mode right here, and that under transform, I'm going to click on convert and static mesh, and we'll accept that. You'll notice that the pivot point has jumped to the center of that object, and so I'm going to reset my position now. To work with this, I'm going to jump out of the camera. We're actually going to change our view a couple of times. So for right now, I want to be out of the camera, and I'm going to go to this default viewport right here. That'll give us the option in just a few minutes to look at it from the right side or the left side. To model this, we are going to need to make sure that it's selected. And then we're going to go into the modeling tab right here under modeling mode. And we're going to go into polygroup edit. Click on that. And it opens up all of these options here. I'm going to move into the object a little bit closer so we can see it better. I'm just using the WSAE keys and my mouse to navigate around. You'll see here in our options, we have face edits. A face is going to be any of this green area here. So that's a face, that would be a face, that would be a face. We also have edge edits. An edge is going to be these lines here. And then we have some other tools that allow us to create edges if we want to. The bevel that I want to create, I'm actually going to create it along the edges. We can create one using the faces, but I like the look of the one along the edges. So we're going to need to select all of the edges on this front and on the back, but then we're also going to need to avoid some. So this is going to take a little bit of work. These edges here, I do not want selected, but there will be some like this one here, these up here that I do want selected also. I'm going to drop down here in our polygroup edit options, and right here under selection filter, I'm going to deselect this first option and this second option. We want just the edges. And now I can select all, and it's selecting only the edges. I need to deselect a lot of these edges here, because if they're beveled, it's going to cause a lot of deformation in the mesh. So up here in perspective, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go to the right side of this. And you'll see there's our object. We're looking at it from the right side. I'm going to use the scroll wheel to zoom in, and my right click to grab this and move over. And I'm just going to keep kind of zooming into this so I can see it a little bit better. I'm going to hold down the control key and then just start scrubbing through here. And you can see that I'm deselecting those. So we can move this around, and I'll deselect all of those right there. I'm going to jump out of the right view here and go back into perspective. And then I need to select a couple of these that I just deselected. This is where it gets a little bit difficult. So just need to navigate around. And I'm going to hold down the shift key to select these. So I'm going to select this one here, 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 and let me move around. And I'm going to select this one. Again, hold down the shift key. And if for any reason you accidentally deselect everything, thankfully you can hit Control Z, undo that, and you're back to your selection. I'm basically looking for the places in this that we have hard angles. So right down here, I know from experience, there's actually two down here that I need to take a look at. So I need the one there at the bottom. Again, hold down the shift key, select it, and then let me go back up, and there's some right there that I need to select. So I'll hold down shift and make sure I select both of those. I think that has it. So again, all of these hard angles right here, I don't want any of these that are creating these curves, just these hard edges right here. I should have everything selected at this point, and now we can go into our options under the edge edits, and we can bevel this. Click on bevel. You'll see our bevel based on the settings here, and we can adjust this. That's quite a bit. I don't want all of that. So I'm going to bring this down probably to something a bit smaller. I'm going to set that to 1. We have the ability to subdivide this. So you'll see right now it's just a straight angle, but we can add a couple of subdivisions into this. It starts rounding it. And the round weight is also very useful. So if I want this extremely rounded, very smooth on it, we can go all the way up to 2, or we can also back that all the way to a -2, and it creates a concaved bevel in there. I'm going to set that back to 1, and that's basically what I want on this. One other thing that I'm going to do is I want to actually add a different material to this bevel than the rest of the object. To do that, it gives us this option right here to set material ID. All of the meshes, when they're created, have a material ID of 0 applied to the entire mesh. So we already have that on this mesh. And so what I need to do is add another material ID. So I'm going to type in 1 right there. That will be the next material ID in the advancement, of course. This bevel all the way across will be set to 1. Once we have all of that set, I'm going to hit accept action, and then I'm going to accept that edit. You'll see now that there is a new material applied, or it wants a new material applied to the bevel. The original material is still applied to the rest of the object. So just to check this, I'm going to move around a little bit to make sure I hit everything. Okay, that looks good. And we need to do one more thing to be able to apply a material to this bevel. because right now we're only showing up with one material ID over here in the details panel. We'll drop down here to attributes, and it gives us this edit materials option. Click on that. In our edit materials panel here, you'll see right here under materials that we have that initial material slot already there. We're going to need to add another one for this bevel. So right there on materials, let's click the plus button. And so you see the original index 0, and then there's the new one that we're adding in. I already have a material created for this, so I'm going to go select it. I'm going to search for it, MD_blue. And there's the blue metal that I want right there. With that material in there, you'll see that it is showing up, but we have a few more steps. Let's go up here now back to our active material. That drop-down menu now will show that new material, that blue metal right there. Let's make sure that it is selected. And now we're going to drop down to Assign Active Material. Click on that, and now we can accept. So in modeling mode, we've been able to take this mesh and add a bevel to it, and then also apply a new material to that bevel. You see that here in the Motion Design Outliner. That object is selected, and we have those two material slots. So we can easily change those out. I'm going to go back into the active camera, and I'll bring that a little bit closer so we can get a better look at it. There is our V, and we can rotate around that. I hope part 1 of creating complex shapes in Unreal Engine has been helpful. In part 2, I'll look at continuing to create complex shapes using the spline tool. For more on motion media design, check out my other videos and hit the like and subscribe button.